in June 1943, he saw something that immediately contradicted 3 years of Nazi propaganda. American dock workers, both white and black, operated advanced machinery side by side. Women worked cranes. Civilians wandered freely near warships, and vendors sold coffee and donuts. Norfolk's capacity alone exceeded Hamburg's weekly tonnage. Yet it was the normalcy that stunned them. "The Americans are crazy," Butcher whispered. The processing began with what Butcher called the first impossibility. While German doctrine minimized prisoners as burdens, American officers read the Geneva Convention rules in fluent German, explaining rights and asking about dietary needs. Jewish American personnel distributed Red Cross packages and explained the availability of kosher meals. German soldiers laughed nervously, thinking it was mockery. It wasn't. Medical inspections provided the same penicillin, a miracle drug barely available in German field hospitals, to wounded German prisoners as to American soldiers. Swiss Red Cross inspector Guy Matreau noted that medical treatment equaled or exceeded that given to American military personnel. Compounding the shock, an African-American medical technician drew blood from Wehrmacht officers, an act of racial contact legally forbidden in Germany, but routine here. Their first meal provided the next shock. American sailors and German enemies, fresh from convoy battles, ate in the same mess hall, sharing the same food lines and quality meals. The Americans showed no particular interest, focused instead on a radio broadcast of a baseball game. The 3-day train journey inland provided continuous cognitive dissonance. The POWs traveled in actual passenger coaches, not boxcars, and authorities made no attempt to hide them. At Union Station in Washington, D.C., German prisoners watched American families publicly kissing soldiers goodbye and teenagers sharing milkshakes. Enemies and families hosted on the same platform. The trains passed industrial areas that should have been camouflaged. Instead, factories displayed their names in huge letters. Prisoners could count B-26 bombers lined up at the Glenn L. Martin plant in Baltimore, with huge parking lots filled with workers' personal automobiles visible from the train. Through Pennsylvania, the night sky glowed orange from blast furnaces that never stopped. Workers lived in individual houses with gardens, not barracks, with electric lights and radio antennas. At a stop in Harrisburg, German officers watched American workers at shift change, carrying lunchboxes, wearing wristwatches, and driving personal vehicles. Butcher noted one worker threw away a half-eaten apple to open a fresh one, a casual waste of food that stunned officers who had seen their men fight over scraps in Africa. Camp Hearn, Texas, housed up to 4,800 German prisoners. The infrastructure challenged German understanding of prisoner treatment. Wooden barracks with electric lights, indoor plumbing, flush toilets, hot water, and individual beds with mattresses. Swiss inspector Emil Sandstrom noted conditions surpassed not only the Geneva Convention requirements, but also the living conditions many men knew in Germany. The camp commander, Lieutenant Colonel Cecil Stiles, explained in fluent German that the prisoners would largely govern themselves within the compounds, organizing activities and electing spokesmen, an idea that seemed like either weakness or a trap. The camp hospital contained equipment many German civilian hospitals lacked, including X-ray machines and penicillin. When prisoner Georg Gardner, who would later become famous as the last POW to surrender in 1985, developed appendicitis, he received surgery within hours. Most shocking was the camp canteen, where prisoners could purchase goods like cigarettes, chocolate, and musical instruments with script earned from voluntary labor. The idea that enemy prisoners could shop and choose purchases went against military thinking. By September 1943, severe labor shortages led to POW employment in agriculture and non-military industries. Prisoners earned 80 cents per day in canteen script, the same base pay as American privates. At the King Ranch, larger than the state of Rhode Island, German POWs worked alongside Mexican-American vaqueros and black ranch hands. The racial mixing and the scale of mechanization, single combine harvesters and aircraft surveying cattle herds, defied European comprehension and Nazi racial theories. Foreman Richard Kleberg Jr. treated the Germans as temporary employees, not enemies. At contingents, POWs saw a day's output exceeded German textile mills' monthly capacity. Yet workers took regular breaks, ate full lunches, and listened to the radio. Prisoners were also shocked to hear American farmers criticize Roosevelt and government policies freely without fear. At one farm near Bryan, Texas, a farmer told an inspector to go to hell over allocation disputes and faced no consequences, an act of defiance that would mean death in Nazi Germany. Local newspapers documented German prisoner interactions with civilians. The Hearn Democrat reported supervised Christmas shopping outings where POWs witnessed American teenage culture. Young people gathered at soda fountains, boys and girls together and unchaperoned, dancing to jazz and swing, music labeled degenerate Negro music by the Nazis. American women's behavior also stunned them, as women drove trucks, operated businesses, and flew military aircraft as part of the WASP program, visible to POW work details. Churches throughout Robertson County invited German prisoners to services. On Christmas Eve 1943, German prisoners attended services alongside congregation members whose sons served overseas, and no incidents were reported. By early 1944, the Special Projects Division had established a secret re-education program at Camp Hearn. The camp library grew to over 5,000 volumes, including works by German authors banned by the Nazis, such as Thomas Mann and Erich Maria Remarque. A German POW could read books that would have meant death to possess in Nazi Germany. Sam Houston State Teachers College provided correspondence courses, with 340 POWs enrolling in subjects like English and American history. The camp newspaper, Der Spiegel, evolved from carrying Nazi propaganda to democratic discussions. Army psychologists developed a screening process to identify 3 categories of prisoners: anti-Nazis, 10%, non-political, 75%, and ardent Nazis, 15%. Anti-Nazis received privileges, becoming barracks leaders and newspaper editors, carefully cultivating their influence on non-political prisoners. By November 1944, reports indicated a transformation rate exceeding expectations. Approximately 60% of non-political prisoners showed measurable movement toward democratic ideals after 6 months of exposure. Working in American facilities exposed POWs to casual abundance that seemed like mockery of German scarcity. At the Alcoa aluminum plant, workers discarded more aluminum scrap in a day than German aircraft factories could acquire in a week. At food processing plants, perfectly edible produce was discarded for minor cosmetic flaws, destroyed while German civilians faced starvation. Prisoner Corporal Friedrich Müller wrote that supervisors apologized for waste, not understanding that he was apologizing for abundance we couldn't imagine. Christmas 1943 was extensively documented. The entire town of Hearn, population 2,000, mobilized to ensure enemy prisoners had a proper celebration, contradicting every expectation of wartime behavior. Local churches collected 4,800 individual gift packages. The American Legion Post 164, veterans of World War I who had fought Germans, donated cigarettes and candy to their current German enemies. The Christmas tree, 30 feet tall, was decorated with electric lights that burned continuously, an unthinkable electrical display even in peacetime Germany. The First Methodist Church Choir, led by Mrs. Sarah Patterson, whose son was serving in Italy, learned German Christmas carols and performed for the prisoners. This act of American mothers singing to enemy soldiers broke several prisoners emotionally.
The Christmas feast totaled approximately 5,000 calories per person, while German civilian rations provided only 1,200 calories daily. POWs also witnessed the contradictions of American racial dynamics. At Camp Hearn, black soldiers from the 359th Infantry Regiment occasionally served guard duty, forcing German prisoners to take orders from black Americans, an authority several prisoners objected to but were denied transfers for. Yet the prisoners could eat in local restaurants that refused service to the black soldiers guarding them, and attend movie theaters where their guards could not sit in the main section. German enemies had more social freedom in some contexts than American citizens who happened to be black. This paradox scrambled their ideological certainty. At worksites, the efficiency of mixed-race work crews challenged Nazi theories about racial purity equaling productivity. The transformation was lasting. Hermann Butcher arrived as a convinced Nazi, but the Christmas 1943 gifts were a turning point, making him realize the kindness was not weakness, but strength, the confidence of victors. He immigrated to America in 1953 and became an engineer. Georg Gartner escaped in 1945 but chose to remain in America illegally for 40 years, marrying an American woman and raising children, finally surrendering in 1985. Reinhold Peel escaped from boredom and curiosity, lived illegally in Chicago for 7 years, and voluntarily surrendered, later becoming a successful businessman and citizen. The German POW experience across America's 500-plus camps showed consistent patterns. Camp Alva, Oklahoma, specialized in agricultural training, with POWs managing a 200-acre demonstration farm, learning skills invaluable for rebuilding Germany. Camp Concordia, Kansas, became renowned for its art program, with prisoners creating murals that still exist in local buildings. Perhaps nothing was more unsettling than American information transparency. Prisoners had access to American newspapers that criticized the war effort, revealed production problems, and discussed strategic failures. Radio featured commentary critical of military leadership, and comedians mocked generals. The 1944 presidential election campaign, observed from the camps, seemed like democratic suicide, with Roosevelt facing a serious challenge and opposition views published freely. Yet the war effort strengthened, demonstrating democracy's strength through discord rather than despite it. International Red Cross inspection reports consistently rated American POW camps above Geneva Convention requirements. Inspector Guy Matrone noted food rations equaled or surpassed American military rations, and medical care was equivalent to military hospitals. Another inspector noted the distinction was philosophical. Americans treat prisoners as temporarily displaced persons rather than enemies. POWs working in American factories observed production methods that revolutionized their understanding of industrial efficiency. At the Lone Star Steel plant, monthly production exceeded the entire Ruhr Valley's annual output before Allied bombing. The secret was not just machinery, but motivation, with workers competing for production bonuses and taking pride in output. At Texas railroad yards, the efficiency was astounding, showing no central planning committee, just capitalism organizing itself for war production. As Germany collapsed, American authorities prepared prisoners for their return to a destroyed homeland. This preparation exceeded simple repatriation. Programs prepared POWs to rebuild democratic Germany with courses in civil administration, agricultural training, and infrastructure reconstruction. Potential democratic leaders were identified and given additional training. Future Marshall Plan concepts were explained to prisoners before public announcement. This incomprehensible generosity, from victor to vanquished, shattered the final remnants of Nazi ideology. The numbers confirm the transformation. Of 425,000 German POWs, Only 0.52% attempted escape, and only 7 confirmed sabotage incidents occurred. Voluntary labor participation reached 87% of eligible prisoners. Post-war surveys found 74% of returned POWs held favorable views of American democracy, and 38% expressed a desire to immigrate to America. Over 5,000 former POWs legally immigrated in the 1950s. Former POWs occupied significant positions in the new West German democracy, with 48 becoming Bundestag members and 312 serving as mayors. Former POW Hans-Georg von Studnitz stated, "We returned from America with more than memories. We brought knowledge of how democracy functions. We had seen the future, and we knew it worked." The transformation endured. Christmas cards arrived annually at the Hearn Heritage League until 2001. In 1984, 50 former Camp Hearn POWs returned to Texas, embracing former guards and placing flowers at the American Legion Memorial. Former enemy Fritz Zimmermann said, "We left as friends understanding that democracy's chaos is its strength, that diversity creates rather than weakens unity." Historians universally agree that American treatment of German POWs represents history's most successful re-education through exposure rather than indoctrination. Every casual freedom, kindness, and generosity accumulated into ideological transformation. They expected a weak nation, but found a society so confident it could afford mercy. The POWs witnessed democracy functioning through apparent chaos, observed racial integration progressing despite segregation, and watched women exercising authority. They didn't just observe democracy, they participated in it. America's greatest victory was in the prison camps, where enemies became advocates through the simple act of witnessing American reality. The sights that stunned them, mundane to Americans, revolutionary to products of totalitarianism, became the foundation for the Atlantic Alliance, the Marshall Plan, and the democratic reconstruction of Europe. Their transformation proves that the greatest victories are won not through destruction, but through demonstration, and not through hatred, but through humanity.